Hey everyone, we'll wait for a couple of minutes. We have a few more registrants and then we'll begin. Yep. Hey guys, can you see my screen? If you can just send me a chat message if you can.
Yes,
Then,
yes, I can.
awesome. Okay guys, so thank you so much for joining us today. So we'll be building CMS using the Notion API. I'm sure. So we use Notion at Appsmith, and I'm sure some of you might be using Notion at your workplace. And as soon as the API, I think most people were waiting for the Notion API to come out. And as soon as it came out, we were essentially scrambling for use cases, trying to play around with the API and see what we could do. Uh, Surprisingly, we had something that we wanted to do. So the way Appsmith works, for some context, is that we have a content calendar where we decide what we want to write, perhaps with the blogs and the tutorials to put out. We also speak to a few freelancers and external agencies to essentially collaborate with us and work with us and put out some content that's useful for our users, some marketing activities and things like that. Since we're doing it all on Notion, it was kind of difficult for us to manage granular access control. And as soon as the API sort of came out, we could easily build an app on top of it, get proposals from different agencies, get proposals from different freelancers, and manage that access control. So our team could essentially go into the Notion page, modify things as and when they could, while external collaborators essentially had to uh, use the app. So that's what we've done over the course of the last week or so as we built this. So with that context, what we'll be doing today is Confidence today will be walking us through the live demo. So we'll sort of do an application overview for about 5 minutes where he'll talk you through the features of the application, what you can do and how you can do it. Then he'll actually build that app right in front of you in 25 to 30 minutes, believe it or not. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A for 10, 15 minutes. Feel free to ask questions throughout the session on chat. We'll answer wherever we can. We'll respond on chat, or Confidence can answer on screen, or one of us will take it on screen. Uh, so what are we building today? So essentially, we like I was just telling you, we have a Notion page where internal users can edit the content calendar. That's what we had till now. Then we'll have an Appsmith page that talks to the Notion API, where external collaborators can actually send us proposals, send us doc links to files where they've written what they wanted to write, so we can sort of collaborate with them when we check our daily when we check our Notion. Um, we From that we'll actually build a view of the content calendar in terms of when are we expecting what, uh, and sort of look at where we are in terms of the content calendar. And finally, this is something we really like doing on our demos. I think we're going to send email reminders to our collaborators if we think something is going wrong. We use Integromat, but feel free to experiment with it. If you're really confident, why don't you just go give the Gmail API a try? It's pretty fun to get it working on us. We have OAuth too as well. That being said, what will we learn today? We'll essentially learn to connect to the Notion API using Appsmith. We'll also learn about the Notion API. So it's not that easy to grok. It's fairly complex in the way it returns. So there's a lot of arrays you need to process, and we'll show you how Appsmith makes it simple. Learn a little bit more about using Appsmith's JS editor, table, form, and modal widgets. And obviously, I think the most important thing would essentially be how do you bind complex JSON responses to widgets. That's probably what we'll be learning today. And with that, over to you, Constance.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead to share my screen. You should be able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so what we have right here is the application that we are going to be building in this demo, and it's a simple content management system. So right here on the page, we have a table showing all the contents we have on our Notion page, and heading over to the Notion page, this is what we have on the Notion page. So the Notion page is essentially serving as a backend, and this API makes us to have the ability to add some functionalities that are not natively built in to Notion itself. Say, for example, we have this content we can go ahead to send an email to the assignee to start up the conversation or remind him about the tasks he's supposed to do. And we also have the ability to build in granular access controls. So to demo that, I am going to quickly show this to you. So right now I'm logged into this app with my Appsmith account. So this means that I'm a member of the team. And being a member of the team gives me the ability to see the content calendar, and then I can also go ahead to email whoever is working on that particular task. But let us say I log out, and I'm going to be doing that right now. So I'm going to sign out. And I'll also still visit this application while being signed out. Okay, I'm going to paste this here. So right now I'm not logged in. Users who are not logged in have the ability to add new content to the content calendar, but they can't see the history. So that makes it really nice because you now have the ability to give specific access to whoever will be using the application by building it on Appsmith. So right here, I'm not logged in. I can still submit the content. And if I go ahead to sign in, so let's sign in. And now that I'm signed in, I have full access to do whatever I want to do on the application. So this is what we're going to be building today. And I think we can get started. So to get started, I'm going to head to my Appsmith dashboard, and I'll go ahead to create a new application. The first thing I want to do here would be to set up the UI for the application. So for that, I would need a few container widgets. So I need about 3 of them. I'm just going to place them on the canvas, and I would resize them to fit my use for them. So let's bring this under here. That means resize this also. And I also need to bring this underneath here. All right, so we have the container setup. I'll need the table widgets right inside of this to display a brief summary of the content, because if you go back to the finished application, we have a table widget showing the content, and I can click through, and clicking on that particular content would refresh an expanded view where I can go in to see all the details about that specific content. So I'll be needing a table widget right here. And I'm going to resize this a bit. And lastly, I would need one more container widget just beside it. So this container widget will be displaying the expanded view of everything we have on that particular content. So let's resize this a bit. All right, so we have the basic layout of our application setup. Now, what we'll do would be to go ahead to connect this application to the Notion API. So for that, I would need to head over to the API section, and I'll create a new API. So let's call this get contents. And it is going to be a post request to the Notion API endpoint. Because I'll need to authenticate this endpoint and I would want to use it a couple of times, I would be saving this as a data source to make it easy to reuse this. So let's call this Notion CMS. And for the endpoint, I'm using the Notion endpoint. I'll need some authentication. So I'll need to pass in the authorization header. And to get the secret key for that authorization header, I'm going back to my Notion application. So what I want to do is to create an integration that would generate a secret token for me to use to connect to this particular page. So to do that, I would head over to the settings, integrations, and then develop your own integrations. I'm going to be clicking a new, creating a new integration. So let's call this Notion integration. And I can submit this and copy its content. All right, so let's go back to the Notion page. After creating that integration, what I want to do is to link it up to this specific page so that we have access to play with this page using the API. So I'll click on the share button, invite, and here we have the new integration we just created. So I'm going to select that and click on invite. And then that integration has been linked to this particular page. So going back to the editor, I can paste in the secret token. And I'll also need one more header. That is the API version header. So let's just paste that in. And its value is going to be date. And we have that right here. All right, so I can go ahead to save this. And now I have the Notion data source configured. So let's make use of this by getting information from my Notion page. So to do that, I'll need to hit the databases endpoint and then the ID of that page, which I'll be grabbing from the URL over here, /query. And let's click on the run button to see if everything works. Yes, we are getting a response, and right here we have a results array. So we'll be making use of this array as we go ahead to build our application. Now we can head back to the table widget and bind the data coming from the get contents API to this table. So let's do that. This will be get contents.data.results, because that is actually where the results for that table is in. But the data coming from this API is not so friendly to the table widget. So what I want to do is to write some JavaScript to make it properly shaped so as to work with the table widget. So I'm just going to map over this, and I'm going to return r.properties. And there we have each column from the Notion page showing up right here on the table. But if you notice, we have objects showing up, so we would need to fix that. So we can go into whichever column we want to fix and then write some JavaScript to fix that for us. So this will be for the due date. Because the due date is of type date, so I'm just going to add a question mark so as to solve for cases when the due date would be empty. So this will be due date.date.start. Okay, sorry. Oh, this is date, rather. Date. All right, so we have the date string up. I'm going to go ahead to do the same for every column we have here. So for the status, this is going to be status.select because it's of the select type. Name. So we have the status string up right there. The same goes for the article. The article is of a URL data type. So this would be .url. And we have the article string up right there. Then we have the assignee. The assignee is of type email. So this would be .email. And we have the assignee string up. And for the description, this is going to be a rich text type. So I'm going to say the description rich text. And this is an array. So I'll be taking the first item plain text. And we have the descriptions showing up. And lastly, we are going to do the same for the title. This is going to be of type plain text, title, make 0.plain text. And we have the title configured. So right here, we have all of the columns configured, but I do not want all of these columns showing up. That is why I have a container widget that will actually show us an expanded view of every item on the page. So what I want to do is to configure this table such that only the due date and the title are visible. So I can hide all of these columns, and we only have the title and due date showing up from the table. Now, since we have that configured, I can then pull in data coming from the table and display that in the container widget we have right here. So let's go back to the widget sections and bring in a few text widgets to display data coming from the table widget. So for that, I will need one text widget right there. I need another one for the description. I need one more for the status. I need one more for the due dates. I also need a new one for the assignee and also the article URL. All right, so let's display their content. I'll need a few text widgets to also do this. So that's for the title. I need an input for the description. I need a text widget for the status. I need one for the due. I need another for assignee. and last one for the article. So I'm going to resize this text widget so that we are properly using the space we have. So let's do that. All right, so we have the layout configured. So now let's actually start displaying data. So this will be for the title. And for this, I will be pulling its value from the table. So this will be table one, which is the table we have on the page dot selected row dot title. I'm just going to copy this over because I would need it a few times. So this will be dot title. And we have the title showing up right there. For the inputs we have here, this will be for the description. Okay, type text, and this will be for the description. So selected row dot description. And I can make this disabled because we do not want it to be editable. And let's update the label to say description. And this is going to be for the status. And let's update the label to also say the same. It's going to be for status. And this is going to be for the due date. But the date is a little bit, okay, I think this date is okay. But if we want to, we can use the built-in moment library to properly format it. So I'm going to say due for the label. Then right here, we have the assignee. And the label would also say assignee. And lastly, we have the article URL. And the label would be article. Okay, so let's expand this a bit so that we will be able to see the entire URL. Okay, so we have the expanded view of the item selected on the table. And we can easily test this by going to select an item on the table and watch this expanded view update. So I'm going to select this, the last item right here, and we can see that the expanded view has been updated accordingly. The next thing we want to do is that we want to build in a feature to actually communicate with the assignee of this particular content so that we can start up a conversation or remind him about that task. So for that, I will need to bring in a few new widgets. I need to bring in a button widget right here. And for this button widget, what I want that button widget to do would be to open up a modal that will allow us to send an email to that particular assignee. So let's call this, let's go ahead to configure the button. So let's say send email. And this is going to be of the secondary button type. When this is clicked on, we want to go ahead to open up the modal we dragged in shortly. So we can test this out by clicking on this and we have that modal showing up. So we can go ahead to configure the modal title to send email. And because we need more room, let us make this modal a form modal type and bring the buttons to the bottom of the modal. All right, so we have the model here. Now we want to fill in the inputs that would serve as the content for the email. So we would need a few input widgets, and for each of those input widgets, we would need labels. So let's bring some text widgets to serve as labels for each of them. Then we would bring in the inputs and place them right beside each label. So let's resize this so that we have more room for each of these inputs. Okay, so this will be the two inputs. That is the assignee we want this to be sent to. So I'm going to update this to 2 inputs. And for its default text, I'm going to be grabbing that from the selected assignee from the table. So this will be table 1.selected row.assignee. And we want this to be disabled because it should not be editable. Then this should be the subject. And this will be the subject input. All right. Then this is going to be the content. And we can update the name of this widget to say content input. And we have that configured. So now let's wire up the confirm button such that when this is clicked on, we go ahead to actually send the email using the API. So we have SendGrid set up for this. I'm going to be using the SendGrid API. So when the button is clicked on, what I want to do is to call an API. I'll be creating a new API to send the email. So let's call this send email. And this would be a post request to the SendGrid endpoint. And similarly, I'll need some authorization here. So let's copy my auth key. All right, and because it's a post request, we need some body. So let's pass in a JSON body that would actually talk to the API. So what I have here in this body is that I'm pulling in the value for each of these fields, say the subject, for example. The same also go for the to field and for the value. I'm pulling each of their values from the inputs we just built on the modal widget. So we have this wired up. Now we can go back to check it out. So when this is clicked on, it is actually calling the send email endpoint. But we want to do more than that. We also want to close up this modal and let the user know that he has successfully sent the email. So what I can do is to enable JavaScript and paste in a code that does all of that. So we are going ahead to call the send email API. We also want to close this modal, which is modal 1, and want to show an alert letting the user know that the email has been successfully sent. So I can test this by typing something out, say hello. And the content is, how are you? Now clicking on the confirm button should do all of those actions we just configured. And we can see that the email has been sent. We have a notification telling us about it right here. The next thing we would like to add to the application would be an ability to refresh the application, because the reason why this would be so useful is because some of our team members may actually go into the Notion page to put in some content, and we want it such that we always get the freshest content on the app. So we should be able to refresh the application without using the browser refresh button. All right, so let's do that. So for the text here, let's just label this table and let's say content calendar. And for the button right here, we are going to say refresh and set this to secondary button. When this is clicked, all we want to do is to call the get content API, and that would refresh the entire application. So let's try this out. Now we can see that the table is refreshed, and also we have the expanded display updated. All right, so the next step we would need to build will be the flow that allows us to create new content in the application. So for that, I think we need a button for that. So let's bring in a text widget right here. Let's say submit new proposal. And we can set this to heading 3. Then we need a button widget that does that triggers opening up the modal. So let's bring in a modal right here into the page, and then we'll configure this button to actually go and open up this modal. So let's do that. When this is clicked on, we want to open a modal, and that is modal 2. So clicking on this should open that modal, and we have it right here. So let's update the title for this modal and say new content. Then for the modal itself, we also want to make this a form modal, and then bring the button to the bottom of the modal so that we can put in some widgets inside of it. So we need to put in widgets to capture data for each new content, and we need a widget to capture the title, We also need one to capture the description. We need another to capture the status. We need another to capture the due date. We need one more to capture the assignee. We also need one more to capture the article link. So let's bring in widgets for each of these labels. Is someone asking a question? Okay. So I'm bringing inputs for each of these. I'm going to bring in a text input for the description, and I'm going to expand this a little bit. I'll need a select input for the status. I need a text input. I'll need a date picker for the due date. I would need a text input for the assignee. And I also need a text input for the article URL. All right, so let's resize each of these inputs so that we have more room for them. Sizing this, size this, size this, and lastly size this. Okay, so this is going to be for the title. So let's go for this title. And this would be the title input. Then this is going to be for the description. Then this is the description input. Then this is going to be for the status. Then this is going to be the status select. For its options, I would need to pass in a custom array that actually captures the status we're interested in. So we have the not started, the in progress, and completed status. By default, I want this to be not started. And we have that showing up right there. Then we also want to capture the due date. So this will be due. And this is going to be the due date picker. Let's set the formatted date to something looking nice. Then we also have the assignee. And this is going to be the assignee input. We can add some validation by setting this to an email type because we would always expect an email for the assignee. And lastly, we have the article URL. And this is going to be the article input. All right, so we have the UI for the form configured. Now, what we want to do is to wire up the API that actually goes to create new content on a Notion page. So for that, I'll be making use of the Notion data source. I'll create a new API. And let's call this add content. This is going to be a post request to the pages endpoint. And for its body, I would be pasting a JSON body that has the correct structure Notion expects. So let's paste this in. So you notice that for the body of this API, we have data coming from the inputs we just configured, such as the title input, the description input, the status select, the due date picker. And the reason why this body is so long is because Notion expects you to properly annotate your data type. So the due date picker is of type date, for example. The status select is of type select. And then we have the actual column that data is talking to. So here we have the API set up. Now we can go ahead to link it to the form we have on the page. So for the confirm button, what we want to do when this is clicked on is that we want to go ahead to call the add content API. And when this is done, because we want to do a couple of things, we can enable the JavaScript mode and write some JavaScript to do some other things when the add content API is successful. So when this is done, when the add content is successful, we want to go ahead to refetch the content by running the get content API. we also want to close up this modal. So we can say close modal and pass in the modal name. So this is modal 2. And lastly, what we want to do here is to let the user know that the content has been added. So we can say content added, and this is going to be of type success. And we have the actions for this button configured. So let's go ahead to give this a try. For its title, I'm going to say Notion CMS. For its description, I'm going to say Appsmith plus Notion API. For the status, this is in progress. For the due date, let's pick a date. Assignee, this is going to be me. And for the article, I actually have a Google Doc article for this. So I'm going to copy the URL and come back to the application to paste it in here. And clicking on the confirm button should run all those actions we configured. Okay, so I'm clicking on that. And we can see that the table has been updated with the new item we just added to the list. So we can see all of this right here on our application. And going back to the Notion page, we have that item added right here on the table. So the last thing we would actually want to do here is to make it such that if a member who is not in the Appsmith team comes to use this application, he only has permissions to create a new content, but he can't see the history of previous contents that have been made. So for that, we can write some JavaScript in the visible property of this container widget, the one that contains the table and the expanded view, to make it only visible if the logged in user's email has the Appsmith domain in it. So for this, we can say appsmith.user.email. If it includes at appsmith.com. So if it includes at appsmith.com, show this modal, show this container. If not, do not show it. So we have all of this configured. And I think the last thing we need to do would be to actually add the title for the app. So let's do that right here. So let's call this Notion CMS. And we can set this to heading 1 and make this center aligned. And there we have our app complete. So let's deploy this and check it out to see if everything works. I'm clicking on the deploy button. And here we have the fully built application with everything working so far. So I'm going to try to share this. I'm going to make this public, copy the URL. Then I'm going to log out from my Appsmith account and see if everything works as we want it to. Yeah, so we can see that we only have access to create new content, but we can't see the history of previously created content. So this is how you can easily build collabs and extend the features of Notion by using Appsmith. So this is all I have to show you. Over to you, Akshay.
Hey, thanks a ton, Constance. That was a great demo. So guys, now, hey, Constance, can you just stop sharing your screen?
Okay.
Yeah, so now we'll have some Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us about the demo, and anything else you might have, please feel free to ask us now. I saw that there were no questions during the demo, so maybe Constance either explained it really well or he did a terrible job. So we need feedback on that. Just kidding. Okay, cool. So I think we have one last announcement to make before we wrap up for the day. We've actually released our community forums. So you can get support on our forums as well, and you can discuss stuff about Appsmith on our forum. So Discord is, yes, Marco, we'll be sending you the record. We have the recording, we'll be sharing it. Yeah, so we are also starting our Appsmith community, so you can check it out. I'm just typing the link on the chat here. So it's on community.appsmith.com. It's on forums where you can come hang out, discuss different things about Appsmith. We've categorized it pretty, at least what we think is pretty well. Open to your suggestions. So Discord is pretty real time. So we are hoping that there are slower conversations, more thoughtful discussions on our community forums, and we'd like that to uh, we like our community to adopt them, and so that we can also have longer term interactions with you guys. So feel free to check that out. And obviously, as always, let us know your feedback, how we can improve, how we can do a better job with you. Hey, thank you, Vignesh. So yeah, and if you have any requests for demos in terms of how if you want to learn something new, how you can use Appsmith in a different way, any tutorials or any guides, feel free to write to me, Conference Nikhil, any of us or Bihar on the call. Just write to us and we'll get it done so you can have a better time using Appsmith, and it's much easier for you to use it. Yeah, so you can find our recordings on our GitHub page and the link that Vihar just shared on the chat. We'll also be updating our website soon with all the recordings. So just you can find it. And we'll also be sending the recordings to all the people who registered for this demo. So that's it from our end, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to seeing you again. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.